Hare Om, welcome. Shalom Alaikum, Shalom. I am Naturadas, and welcome to my live share. I think this is number 21 today. I've been really enjoying having these live shares. I've been doing it since Easter, and I have a kind of I've got people tuning in from all over the world, and lots of friends, old and new. And what I do is I do a few oms to start off with to tune myself and allow others just to tune into spiritual vibration. And then after that, I do some prayers to my guru and the lineage that I belong to. And then I do some chants and maybe a song as well. And then I continue my epic story. And I've been telling a story about my whole journey in life and how I managed to end up with the name Maturadas. It's a long historical process involving the East and West coming together, psychedelics, the counterculture in the 60s and 70s. And I've been part of the Krishna movement since 1973 and got my name Maturadas at 74. Been through a whole journey in my previous shares, and that's brought us up to kind of a stage in my whole journey with my journey within the Krishna organization, and also the where the Krishna movement itself is going. And I've just been on a long journey from Europe overland with a group of Krishna devotees, and I've just got to Bangladesh. That's why I got my last share. So please join me for that. Okay. Hope people are there now. If anybody's there, please say hi. It's getting ready. So 3 ohms. Jai Ram. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swavaranditam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamala Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sahagrajatam Sahaguna Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishakam Vidamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namayom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paskacha Desacharine Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Ho Ram and Sarva, lovely to see you all here. I'm going to just change the key. Welcome everybody, thanks for joining in. It's so lovely to be able to share this with all of you, and especially today I'm quite excited, and as in previous ones, if it gets really, kind of, I can sometimes get emotional because I'm kind of reliving the stories, and there's some far out stuff going to happen in this one today. And I just gave a recap for people at the beginning, about everything that's gone before. So I left you all yesterday. If you were there at the share, we were just kind of, me and Ravi had just crossed the border after going to the Mayapur festival and returning back to Bangladesh after coming there overland. But I realized that I actually, sorry. Okay. Jumping ahead of myself. I realized that I've missed out a few things. So before I start, I'm going to backtrack to a few things, important things, like how we found Radhadesh and a couple of other things like that. I forgot to mention those. They're quite important historical things. Okay, so I'm going to do this, the chant. It's my composition. It's a famous chant. Some devotees don't like it. Apparently, I don't know. It's not authorized. But anyway, it's going to become authorized halfway through. It's going to turn into Om Namo Narayanaya, and the raga will change. But it's Sri Krishna Govinda, Hare Murari, He Natha Narayana Vasudeva. I don't see any problem in it. Anyway, here we go. And you imagine the tablas. Krishna Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Hold on. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Nata Narayana Vasudeva. Nata Narayana Vasudeva. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Nata Narayana Vasudeva. Nata Narayana Vasudeva. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Nata Narayana Vasudeva. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. He Nata Narayana Vasudeva. He Nata Narayana Vasudeva. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. He Nata Narayana Vasudeva. Shri Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. 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 Hari Om. Om Namo Namo Lakshmi Narayana 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 Lakshmi Narayana 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 Shanti, 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 Hari Om. Haribol, Haribol, not sure what song to sing. Do you know what? I'm just going to go straight into the story tonight. It's amazing. Since I started talking about Bangladesh in my head, I've just the last few days just been going over. I even had a talk to my Kiran in Hawaii last night, just to who spent 10 years on and off in Bangladesh and West Bengal, and I was just trying to get the dates exactly right, and because we were really kind of pioneers. Um, a couple of the Swamis had gone there during the Pakistan-Bangladesh war in '71. Around that time, Gargamuni may have gone there. A couple of people went there, and Vyasaki and Narayan, what's his name? Narayan, I think his name is. I can't remember his name. Anyway, they were on the library party, and Vyasaki was on a mission to learn kirtan and know more about it. So he had this very, very good Nagamichi tape recorder that he went around to villages and recorded lots of kirtan at that time. But I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But that's how the kind of devotees started to kind of like get based in Bangladesh. Um, and that's when I come into the story. But I'm just going to kind of just before I carry on with that story, I'm just going to because in that year of 78, just before I left and had the confrontation with Bhagavan, um, what was happening was the lease with the rent for the healing glut was running out, and they were looking for an alternative accommodation for the community, and a few of us were kind of it was our kind of service actually was to be go and look at properties and see if we could find anything suitable both in Holland and in Belgium. And for Mukta Sangha and me went most of the time, and then also sometimes Mrigapati was there and Rana Durmada, and we'd seen some, what do you get for and that we're all kind of initially, there was still paranoia about atom bombs and all those different things, and war still is, and so there was all this thing of possibly trying to get someplace out in the country. Nobody was really kind of sure what kind of building was available, because now the community had grown. We had two buildings in Amsterdam, one on the Heringgracht, one on the Keizersgracht, women, men, and all of the temple. And the kind of things that we were looking at were monasteries and schools mostly, and a few chateaus, but not so much in Holland. When we kind of ran out of options around Holland after looking at a few, and they were quite far out, but we just thought they were just not suitable, or they was kind of soulless. And then we went down to Belgium. We had these estate agents looking for us, and they would find these places and tell them, and we would go and see a few in a day. And one of them was just, I took it was picturesque, but totally impractical. It had a moat round it, and you went over the moat, and it was all kind of had ceilings with clouds on it. And one of the this kind of weird wallpaper you see. I think it was maybe not wallpaper, but it was put on walls. It was embossed. One of them had these incredible kind of embossed materials all over it, but none of them were practical. And then, after looking for quite a few, we got another call and a few addresses, and me, Mrigapati, Rana Durmada, and Vimukta Sangha ended up going to this place near Septon, not far from Liège. And it's down in the kind of it's where Holland and Belgium kind of meet near Maastricht down there. And we were waiting for somebody to come. We with the travel agent, we were following. We had a car, he had a car, but we were waiting for the owner. And we arrived in this little village, and there was this very gothic looking kind of chateau. It looks much older than it actually is, because actually it's a copy made in the 19th century of a much older building. And we were looking at it and pretty stunned, and we were just we had our civvies on, and then it was like something out of like a James Bond movie. Suddenly this kind of amazing Lotus Elan car slithered in, and this guy jumped out with these kind of boots, leather boots, looking really cool. His name was Serge, and he was the owner, and he was very charismatic chap. He'd had the property for about 5 years, and he'd actually kept the heating on, so to stop it, rotting and keeping it alive. And he hadn't lived in it. He wasn't sure what to do with it. He'd bought a whole bunch of adjacent land, and he just wanted to stop people hunting and stuff like that. He was really cool. He was a bit of a maverick, and that's why he kind of quite liked the idea of kind of the Krishna community. Even though we didn't look like full-on Hare Krishnas, he kind of knew we were. And then we went in, we looked all around, but it was when we actually went into the basement of the kitchen, the down area, and it had been used during the war by nurses, and had been used as some kind of convalescence home, and so it was a kind of a practical building. It was the first one we'd seen. It was so solid, and it had a walk-in fridge. It had these massive cooker things and everything, and you could just see that would obviously work for a community. It was the only one that we'd seen that was even close to it. And anyway, months and months later, or not that long afterwards, Bhagavan went to see it. And the person who really knows lots of the stories is from Mukta Sangha, but also Raja Vidya. So maybe one day Raja Vidya will give a talk. He was there involved with all of the beginning. I heard some amazing stories when I went there down a couple of years ago for a reunion. He told me about stuff because even though I was there, I kind of was there and we discovered it. I wasn't really going to stay in there as part of the community because my destiny was taking me in another direction. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. So that was good. Now, Radhadesh is most probably one of the most successful ISKCON centers in the whole Western world, as far as I know. And it's a beautiful place. Everyone who goes there, it's a beautiful location. And they've done tons of renovation work, built guest houses, and they have a restaurant and a shop, and the deity room is fantastic. I was there at the beginning when they had all these local guys come and do all the marble work and the painting when they installed, put Radha Gopinath and Jagannath and Baladev Subhadra and Gauri Taivan. They all came from Holland and they changed their residence. And as Paravita mentioned the other day, after the Herengracht closed, at least in Amsterdam, the temple never really recovered because all the kind of center from the zone, kind of the energy was siphoned down to Radhadesh as the center, and Amsterdam became secondary. That was just what happened. It's a shame about that, but I've never been really. That's never been part of my history. And there was also another thing before leaving off with Ravi and all the chaps overland. There was I was mentioning the other day, yesterday, about after the post-war, after the post. Prabhupada and the gurus becoming gurus, there was a group in Vrindavan, the Yashodanandan, Guru Kripa, and Pradyumna, that were quite anti. They were the first kind of group of power group, but they were in a minority who were kind of like questioning the stance that the new gurus were taking in their new role. And you can go and Google it if you're interested. It's called Pradyumna's Letter to the GBC. The amazing thing is, if they'd listened to what he'd said, I mean, the things could have been so much better. Everything that he said was spot on. The way that the role that they were taking, how they were interpreting their roles as gurus. He got into the etiquette and how it should be. And he'd been around Prabhupada in the last, very close with Prabhupada all the time. And he knows that none of these things were said by Prabhupada for them to interpret the role of being gurus in the way that they did. So that letter had gone around. And people had seen that letter, and that letter was in the end of '78. That letter had gone around, and then the other thing that I forgot to mention was that we also went, as we were going across India to go to Bengal, back to Bengal, or after coming across from overland from Europe. We went. I told you we went to Varanasi, we went to Naimisharanga, but I forgot to mention we went to Ayodhya, and it was something quite lovely happened in terms of seeing the actions of one of your friends and devotees doing an act of real compassion. So what happened was we spent the night in our van. I know we only had one van in the square in Ayodhya. There's just a kind of a square. We just parked our van there, and it was very quiet in those. Very very quiet, and we slept in the van. And what we had bought, we bought these kind of little water spray things that were good for kind of just spraying the windows, different things if we needed moisture. It was quite hot as well. You just kind of sprayed yourself with water. It was getting up, building up. And in the morning, when I woke up out of the van and got out the back to go to find somewhere to go to the toilet and everything, I saw that there was this person on the floor, totally naked, with no hands and no feet, completely covered in black grime and dirt and everything, and was writhing there with kind of foam coming out of the mouth. And I was just frozen and shocked. And then I think somebody else came out, and we were looking there, and just then a local lady, just opened her kind of like chai shop, and we were all kind of like, all so shocked by it. We were just kind of paralyzed, didn't know what to do. And then Pitambar, I think we either mentioned it or Pitambar just jumped out, and without even a think, he just went straight to the man, and he just said, "Bring some water, bring this." And he said, and he said to the lady, "Bring a blanket, bring some chai." And we all just started doing this thing. And Pitambar stood there, sat with the guy, we put a blanket over him. He got some water and he sprayed his mouth, and we got some water, and Paul gave it to the guy who's sipping it. We did. He looked like he was dying, but he was obviously well. He could have died. He was suffered from exposure. He was just out completely under the elements with no hands and feet. It's quite intense thing to kind of witness and experience, and especially in somewhere like India. But with literally, the lady had made some chai, and he'd managed to get a chai, and after the water held the chai there, and kind of gradually he kind of came alive. You know, he wasn't dead. He just needed some comfort and some things. And I thought I'd just mention that because that story may never have been told. It's just to show you how you can tell the heart of somebody, whatever things might go on in their life, and you can see the spontaneous act of compassion there. That was wonderful, and I know for many years later, Pitambar did lots of things to help people. So, Jai Ho Pitambar, who's now in Germany after a motorbike accident, not doing very well. He had a bit of brain damage, so haven't heard about him for a little bit, but hope he's recovering. Um, that was, I thought I had to mention that. Where are we now? Sorry. I just need to go back to my notes. Okay. Oh, the other important thing that I didn't mention as well was um, we went to Bangladesh, and I told you we came to the Mayapur festival, and I talked about that Nam Kirtan group. I saw a very good Kirtan group in Navadvip. But also something else quite important happened. For those who've been following the story, just kind of before the big journey overland, one of the reasons for leaving Amsterdam was because of a confrontation with Bhagavan in his room, and I've described that a few shares back. Now, what happened was he was there at the Mayapur. Everybody's there at the Mayapur festival, and I was standing at the back watching him give a class, and I had still all these bitter feelings, and I was resentment about him and everything. But Chanarari, who was my friend, who left Bangladesh now and come to Mayapur, he was going to go off to Korea after this. He he wanted to go and see Bhagavan because he hadn't seen him for ages, and so Bhagavan had his room up on the Lotus building. So after this class and everything, we both went up together. But I said to Chanarari, "Well, I'm not going in. You can go in." Chanarari said, "Okay, okay." So I kind of went up and stayed on the veranda, hanging over the wall a little bit away from the door, so I couldn't be visible. And Chanarari went in, and I could hear everything. And he paid his pranams, and Bhagavan first thing goes, "Yes, where's Mathura?" Because he knows that we were all hanging out together, and must be heard that we were there. And Chanarari says, "Oh, he's a bit upset about what happened in Amsterdam." He says, "Oh," and then he said, he called from the room. He said, "Mathura, please come." And I was just, okay. And I go into the room and offer my respects, and and he pays his respects. And I just sit there, and the first thing he does is he says, "I'm very sorry. I apologize for how I treated you in Amsterdam. I did it wrong. It was very wrong. I shouldn't have treated you like that." And as soon as he did that, it's magic, this thing, isn't it? When somebody apologizes, there's an automatic kind of, it breaks a spell of resentment that may have been caused in whatever way. Anyway, so and then immediately we were kind of okay again. Despite all my reservations about the guru trip and everything, at least on a personal level, we were friends again. And he even, we even ended up going to Calcutta and buying him a harmonium and doing a whole bunch of stuff. But it was a relief for me as well to have that kind of sorted out. So I thought, because in my next shares, I'm going to talk about things. And if I hadn't mentioned that reconciliation, it wouldn't have made sense. And so there you go. I've done all my backtracking now. Okay, well, here we are. We're back. I'm bringing everybody back to the story. After that festival in Mayapur, because I'd already been to Bangladesh, come back for the festival. January had left Bangladesh, and now I was going back with Rasika in our van, and we had I don't know if we'd already taken the generator in the last one, but we were taking books and stuff anyway, lots of stuff. And I talked about that lovely little endearing thing at the border. It's quite amazing. To get to Dhaka, you have to kind of go a long way on roads and then go on a ferry across rivers. But that's basically a lot of what Bangladesh is. It's traveling on lots and lots of ferries across rivers. At certain times, there's a lot of water. You've got the Ganga coming down from one side, and then you've got the Brahmaputra coming, and then they meet just near Dhaka. And there's points sometimes in Bangladesh where you get to when you're going especially south towards the estuary, Bay of Bengal, it just comes so wide you can't see the banks. It's like an ocean. You don't really see it that big anywhere, except maybe in the monsoon seasons in other parts of northern India, but it's just amazing. And they have these quite quaint kind of paddle steamers. I don't know if they still have them, or they did have them there. They remind you of like Mississippi paddle steamers, slightly kind of a more kind of funky version, but they give you that mood. And so we crossed over there because last time I flew with Prabhu Vishnu. Well, we did come back that way, that's true, and to the festival. So I had this experience with going on these rivers, and I knew it was going to be part of the whole story. So when we got to Dhaka, um, I think what had happened was Mahakratu, another devotee who Brahma Vishnu had recruited in the festival, had come with him, and they'd flown into Dhaka. And so now, and then so there was Vyasaki there was Prabhu Vishnu, there was me, Rasika, Mahakratu. That was it at that time. Maybe, I don't know if there was any Bengali devotees. I'm not really sure at that time, but Chanarari wasn't there. And where the centre was in a kind of middle class suburb, and it was called in a place called Tej Kunipara, and it was a typical kind of modern Indian Bangladeshi kind of house. It didn't have it had a big roof and quite a big floor. It had quite a few rooms and a kitchen, and one room that was put aside as like the little temple room, and a couple of bathrooms. And the landlord was a chap called Mr. Burry, who was rather friendly. Chanarari had took me over there because he'd made quite a good friendship with him over the years, and they rented it from him. And there was lychee trees and mango trees, I think jackfruit trees in the garden, and there was even its own pakor that off season they would grow vegetables in. So it was decided what we were going to do. We over the because now we had this vehicle that we brought overland. We were going to use it for what it was brought for, and we were going to Rasika had been in Bengal for quite a while, West Bengal, and actually knew Bengali. And we got on really well. He was from New Zealand. He'd been in university, studied chemistry. He was very broad-minded, and we just got on really. Always did. I'd like to have a chat with him on the phone, so maybe I will. Mahakratu, who I wasn't quite sure of. It was a bit incongruous, and we weren't really kind of like upwardly mobile, proactive to be leaders and stuff. And somehow or other, he got made the leader of our group, just three of us. Most probably not the best decision, but it managed. We were all quite easygoing. Mahakratu was in kind of he was in a kind of unknown territory for him, this kind of villages in Bengal, and he wasn't as into Indian culture as we were. He was a bit more kind of westernized, and we were both actually very specifically coming on these journeys to come to these places to get away from all of the kind of Western package. We wanted to go kind of native in a sense. But anyway, there you go. That was it. We were there, and we looked on these maps. We got all these maps out, and then we looked at the territory, and there were certain areas that no devotees had gone before, and we had a kind of a program that what we were going to do is we had this generator, and we had some funds from Prabhupada's fund for feeding poor people. Basically, we had a whole bunch of funds for making wherever we went. If we put on a little kind of event, we could procure grains and dal, and at least cook a big for all the people that would come to the little mini event that it was going to be. And we had slides and a projector. And maybe we had our own screen as well that could be put up in any village. It was just a kind of a big sheet. And the idea was they looked at the map and they it was like, okay, they knew that this one area in Bangladesh, there were certain areas where there were like little oases or strongholds of Hindus, and they all lived very um, separate. In Hindi, we would say alag, alag, separate. You'd have the Muslim villages, and then you have the Hindu villages, and sometimes you have loads and loads of Hindu villages in big, big areas. That's what it was like, at least in '79. But over actually in the whole of during the 20th century, um, uh, Bengal went through huge political upheavals and was cut in half once by the British, and then that border was taken away. There had been communal tension for a long, long, long time going on between the Hindus and Muslims in Bangladesh. And so there was always this thing, and there still is to this day. But now the Hindus are such a minority. Um, anyway, and actually the Gaudiya Vaishnava, you could say that some of the most famous people in the Gaudiya tradition, including Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his family, actually come from East Bengal. They come from Sylhet, from Dacca, and uh, uh, Jagannath Mishra's family, he came from there to settle in Navadvip. Advaita Acharya came from there, Madhavendra Puri, they all came from Sylhet. My dear friend Himanshu Goswami, who's also from Sylhet. It's a big stronghold of Vaishnavism. And the other place where we were going to is a Rajshahi. There's a district Rajshahi, which is kind of north westish of Dhaka, and it kind of borders onto India up there. And it's quite a big area. But we were just going to go. We had this plan of just kind of heading, um, because what happens is when you start going into these areas, one contact leads to another contact leads to another contact, and they already had quite a few contacts. But this area, we were just kind of just going to go and see what would happen. It was quite exciting. So after getting settled and everything, in Dhaka and getting everything sorted, our kind of route worked out, we left kind of quite early one morning. Uh, so that sounds like a folk song, doesn't it? And we let off. We went off, and it was what was it? Yeah, it was after Holi, so heat was beginning to pick up. It wasn't as cool as it was a few weeks before. Anybody who spends time in India, especially in the eastern part of India, it really picks up after Holi. The temperatures can start shooting into the late 90s and hundreds and everything. It all depends where you are. Lucky in Bangladesh, even though it's very humid, there is lots of water. So as we travelled out of Dhaka, I remember we came to the big river where we were going to cross. I think that was the Padma. I think that was, or the Brahmaputra. That was the Brahmaputra we crossed. That was really quite big, but not as big as I mentioned earlier. We got on one of the ferries, and we crossed over. And as we and Rasika was driving, there's just us three, me and Mahakratu, and we were in our civvies, and we drove for quite a while, and we didn't want to go on too late because it was starting to go from into the afternoon, and we wanted to get wherever we were going to get before dark. And I think we just kind of went over a little bridge, a small little river, and then suddenly it was this thing that we did. It was called spot the dhoti. As soon as you spotted the dhoti, you were in. That's all you needed was one chap in a dhoti. So as we were cycling, we suddenly saw a dhoti, and it was like, And Rasika would kind of call the chap. There was somebody on a bicycle really, and Rasika just spoke in Bangla to him, and he just said, where's the Hindu area? Where are all the Hindus living really? And he laughed and smiled. And he actually, I think, we were actually almost right there. We were just in this kind of smallish villagey thing, but it was off the main road, so it wasn't that small. And he just kind of turned his bike round and he just kind of said, "Follow me." And we drove with our car, just went off the road and parked the car under these kind of like palm trees in a kind of courtyardy area. And there was a big house with tiles and a veranda and wooden pillars, and it looked like definitely somebody of importance lived there. And we got out of the car, and I think the chap who brought us there kind of went over there and said, "Look, there's some foreigners here." And so we went over, and he looked very bewildered, the chap who came out. He had his kind of hair a bit disheveled and everything, and he had been taking a rest and had his lungi on, and he was like, "Who are we?" Because we didn't like, "Who are we?" We could be kind of Christian missionaries. You couldn't tell who we looked like. We had our kind of, we didn't look like Vaishnavas. Um, and they'd never seen foreigners as far as we knew, at least belonging to the Western devotees. And then as soon as, within just a couple of minutes of I think Rasika maybe got a book. That was it. He took a book and he just showed him the pictures of Mayapur and the books. And the guy is completely transformed. And he got it. And he kind of just went really, really excited. And then, it was like calling and, calling out to the wife, to the people, servants or whatever it was. And the next thing you know, we was kind of like, sit there. Refreshments were brought on a table. And then suddenly it was all just kind of like, me and Mahakratu were just kind of like watching it all happen, because all the conversation and everything was happening between Rasika and this gentleman. And Rasika basically explained to him what we wanted to do. We wanted to we'd come there, and we had this generator, we had a slideshow, we had some money to give towards food for a big feast. Well, not a big feast, but at least the basics for lots and lots of people. And it was all, there was suddenly this buzz, and it was, I've never experienced this ever before, and the surrounding is just, everything is lush, lush. And there's just this greenery of trees everywhere around, with mango trees and lychee trees and jackfruit trees and coconut trees and palm trees and papaya trees. And then the kind of, wherever there's kind of courtyards, they're all kind of immaculately cleaned with cow dung and mud, and they all look like beautiful. And another far out thing happened just at this moment when we arrived there, and I wasn't quite sure. I thought it was kind of specially put on for us, but actually they have these village musicians and troops that just wander from village to village. And suddenly, all of a sudden, this group appeared while we were on this veranda as the guests of this people, and all these village kids and people around, they're all looking at us, and suddenly this group came in, and it was like an instant kind of festival. This guy in the lead group, he had really thick matted hair, and he looked quite wild, and he was playing this mridanga, and they were doing this dancing and singing and playing the things. They were a little family troupe, you could tell it, and it was all about Radha and Krishna. It was fantastic. We were just like, I was just in bliss, basically. This was just like the beginning. It was just started. We just arrived, It was all just kind of going on. And that kind of finished. And then he kind of mentioned to the kids, this is what's going to happen. And this whole thing, this collective thing, it's incredible. They were all just kind of like, it was amazing watching the village, because it's a village tribal thing. All they just need to know is this thing that's going on, and they all just do it. And it's like some big, it's like some, it's more than just an individual. And so all of the, they swept everything off, everything was cleaned, and they took us off to another house where we could stay and have our bath, our shower, in a pukur. And I had one pukur bath. And this was oh my goodness, I remember going to the house, we got our little rooms, everybody was just so excited and so hospitable. We just had to let go, and everything was, we had these little rooms in the mud house. They'd given us each kind of like, I think, I don't know if we had a room each or we shared a couple of rooms each. And we changed into our gumptious, put our stuff there, and we went off to have these. These little kids took us down to the Pukor, to the bathing Pukor, and it was just like paradise. It really was. It was a small Pukor, not too big like the other one. And I remember walking into it and going, "This is." It's like out of some kind of a kind of Disney movie or something. Everyone's happy. There's this festive atmosphere, and then we just kind of plunged into these pools. And it was all just so cool, and everyone's just laughing. And then we get back, dry ourselves up, and then this happened quite a. This is the first time it happened where we would change and put on our tilak. We were all brahmacharis wearing saffron, and when we came out of the rooms dressed with the tilak and the saffron, everyone's expressions changed. They all kind of went, and we were like, it was like we went out of our kind of civvy mode into this mode. See, what we're experiencing it's not what kind of backpackers or people would be experiencing going on, or the holiday makers going on holiday. It was a very kind of unique type of experience. We were very fortunate to experience, especially at this time, being so pristine and being kind of the first people to go to ever go there, foreigners anyway. And then this whole kind of then it was kind of getting darker and darker and darker, and they'd made a whole kind of area where the local kirtan people, the people who were going to sing, they'd already come. Everything was so organized. They were all just sitting there. We sat down, and everyone was just this thing, mutual mind-blowing thing. We're all looking at them, and they're looking at us. I'm just going to feel like I've just entered into some part of Gauranga Leela, and it's all fabulous. And then they start to do their kirtan, and many people in Bengal, they do that similar melody in the evening. But they have this whole kind of evening thing, and then they did this kirtan, and all the children in these villages. That's one of the amazing things. They're all kind of like a choir. They've been trained by the kirtan people, and they all sing this incredibly high thing. And the kirtan, and they sang a few songs, and then it was over to us. They wanted us to sing a little bit, and that would always be a little testing. And I just kind of led some simple chant because I was the best chanter in the group, and we didn't play mridanga. They played. I just said, "Could you play mridanga?" I just led with some kartals, and that was that really. And then it was to they were all really really excited, and they put up these bamboo poles and put these sheet across because they were going to have a slideshow. And it was a whole big thing with the table, putting up the slide projector. Rasika was totally in charge of all of that. And what had happened was, I think as well, was that Mahakratu had gone earlier as well with the head of the village, or somebody who was important in the village, who'd been deputed to this task. And they'd gone and actually procured all the rice and the dal from the shop with some money. And instantly some people had dug a big pit over to the side. They'd had the big pot miraculously appear, the wood, and already the kind of the cooking of the kitchery and everything had already started. It was all just happening. This thing was just happening. And it was all under the stars in the village courtyard. It was just incredible. I'd never seen the slideshow. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was just kind of watching it all happen because I was kind of like making sure, going over to where the kitchery was, looking at the people and everything. And there was this one bit I always remember in the slideshow. Now, many of Bangladeshis who are Gaudiya Vaishnavas, because they are poor and they live in kind of more remote areas, they've only heard of Vrindavan, heard of Navadvip and Mayapur. Many of them have never been there, so they all have a kind of mood of separation from the holy places. I only discovered this after being there, and you know, that all, you know, because you know, because it's majority is Islamic, and they're kind of quite subdued, basically, by the overwhelming kind of Muslim presence. And most of these, there are lots of Vaishnava, small little Vaishnava places in Bangladesh, but the, you know, the major places, Vrindavan, Navadvip, Ayodhya, Varanasi, everything's over there. And so when the, 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 the slideshow was all about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, really, and it showed pictures of Navadvip and you know, pictures of Kirtan, and he would give a few comments. And then there was a picture in Puri because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had been to Puri, and at the Gambir, his wooden chapels, his sandals, are kept in a box, and I think they're covered with sandalwood that have been offered on them. And there was a picture there that he projected. And I just remember watching everyone, you know, just the noise of the generator was going. They put a few light bulbs and stuff up. Everything was, a couple of light bulbs have been lit up for the village and the projector, all from the, you know, from this generator. And he just said, I remember, I think he had, yeah, he had a microphone. We had a microphone and a speaker, and he said, Mahaprabhu Chapel. And I just remember the whole audience going, oh, wow, Haribol, Haribol, you know, like really, you know, that's what he said. He said the shoes of Mahaprabhu, and I just remember all the crowd going. And so there was this bit where we wanted to kind of offer the the kitchery, you know, and so they came up with this idea. They just put this huge big cloth on the ground, massive cloth, got the pot after it had been cooked, and just poured the whole pot like a huge, massive mound. And then they brought a chair, and I got from I got from our van pictures of Prabhupada, Mahaprabhu, Radhakrishna, and they put a cloth, and um, and I sat down to do you know, an offering. I had my pointer, my Gayatri, and I started to do the mantras. I'd never done anything like this before. And while yes, Rasika was carrying on, I was doing this whole thing on the side, and Mahakratu was mostly just watching everything as well. And I did the offering, and when I kind of like opened my eyes, all the pictures were covered with garlands and flowers that people had just come and made and put them there while I was doing the offering. It was all just so beautifully spontaneous. And when I went to do my pranams after doing the mantras, all the people there went down and did pranams together. It did remind me almost a bit of Life of Brian. But it was not that I'd seen it yet, but when I did see it, I thought, oh yeah, I've been there in that one. And it was the mood was wonderful. All of it, and then when the slideshow had been finished, suddenly it was announced, bro, you know, Prashadam, you know, everybody, all the village people, and suddenly they were all boom, 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 boom. Everyone's laid down, and all of those kirtaniers, the people who've been doing the kirtan, they were the ones that kind of like did all the. There was buckets, and they went round, and they just went round to everybody and did all the prashadam distribution. It was just fantastic. I'll just never forget that first celebratory experience in Bangladesh. It was fantastic. It was one of the best, actually. That very first. It was just kind of. It was just so spontaneous and unplanned. And it's amazing how I can just remember all these details to this day. The sounds of the kirtan, the mood of the evening with the stars, kind of up above in the palm trees, and that Mahaprabhu chapel from Rasika. It was wonderful. And while we were there, because you know all the villages are connected, there was a lady who was from another village who was a Vaishnavi who'd seen us, and we didn't know this, but behind our backs, we kind of woke up in the morning, and it was like, okay, this is what's happening. You're all going to go now to this village because this lady saw you and she's going to invite you. And we were like, wow. And we were like, it was a bit kind of, we've never been invited to a lady. And they said, she is a very, very, you know, great Vaishnavi. You know, they were explaining to us, few people. And somebody from the village was going to come with us and take us to the place where we were going. So that's where went. It just kind of, this is what we just started with, that one dhoti, and the next thing we were just in it. We were in the thing. So, and we weren't hanging out long time. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were just going with the flow. And when we got to this other place, it was a very different atmosphere. It wasn't quite as idyllic, and it was near a school playing field of a local school. But there was a whole little enclave of Hindu houses. But when we came to her house, oh my goodness, it was all there'd be clean white sheets put all over the floor with jasmine petals everywhere. And it was like, oh my goodness, it's so humble, so beautiful, and so devotional. It was almost kind of like almost too much to take the hospitality on this level. And they want to do these things. They want to kind of wash your feet and everything, and you have to kind of like stop them really. Otherwise, it can get out of hand, the level of devotion. And that night we did a similar kind of program. Quite a few people came, but this time there was a few Muslim people watching what we were doing. In fact, a policeman even came in the evening because he'd heard through the buzz that they wanted to know what we were. Were we Christian missionaries? What were we trying to do? And we just said, no, we've just come to see some of our Hindu friends and things like that. But we could see it's maybe not the best place to spend too long. And when it came to quite a lot of people came for the slideshow and everything. Um, there was a bit of agitation from some of the local when they were offered prasadam. They were like, "We don't take Hindu prasadam," you know. And there was, we thought, well, we'll try and kind of wind. We kept out of the way a bit and let all the locals do the thing. Um, and then as far as I remember, before we got to Rajshahi, then we came to this other really fantastic village. This was also incredible. Um, this could have been where we are, is around the Pubna district, leading up to Rajshahi. Um, we just kind of parked our car and found out there was this. We mostly came with each village. Somebody came with us to take us to somewhere else. Generally, that's what happened. Not all the time. And we arrived in this one village, and I think we just crossed the ferry. I remember we cut the small ferry. We had the van up, parked, and we were just trying to figure out where to go and what to do. And somebody took us before we drove the van into kind of down towards this little village area. And I was walking past this one hut, this incredible Vaishnav with his hair come back, very handsome, and he just went, Harima, Harima. And he was called Nitai. His name was Nitai. And he just said, come into my house, please, And we were just kind of like, just walked in, and he was sitting down, and he just kind of got out the harmonium and just started singing bhajans. It was just like, wow, it was incredible. And I just sat there, and of course some refreshments came and everything. And then Rasika came, and we explained what we were there to do. I think all the other guy explained. Everybody kind of knew what was happening. And then we met the other people in the village, and there were all these lovely farmer types, and they all had Kuntimala. They all had these lovely, pure expressions on their faces, all very, very endearing. And these lovely huts with mostly with thatch, yeah. And they were bamboo and mud, and so everything was so impeccably clean. And we went through a similar type of scenario in this village, but again, we were in our civvies, and they hadn't really seen us as kind of. They, he understood, but the village people were still trying to get their head around actually who we were and what we were doing there. And it's a good question. What were we doing there? We definitely, devotees were preaching, and we definitely were preaching to anybody, and we definitely weren't into converting anybody, because these people have been generations ahead of us in the game, and we've been kind of dabbling in their culture for the last few years over in the West. And I've driven thousands of kilometers across miles across from Europe to here just to meet these people and see how they live and what their culture is. And we were there really to because they were starved of literature and their kind of Vaishnava literature. That's what we felt was, and they really wanted Bhagavad Gitas, and there was copies of Prabhupada's Bengali Gita Gan, and a few other small books have been translated into Bengali, and that was it. And it was basically to kind of like give them strength and hope. This thing that I explained before, that there's actually this big tribe that's growing internationally. That's the Goranga tribe that's been spread internationally by Bhaktivedanta Swami, who's from Calcutta, and we are your cousins, spiritual cousins from the other side of the world. And I mean, for me, I was there for the, I don't want to say for the ride, but it was for the experience of just meeting these people and hearing their kirtan, seeing their lifestyle, just having their association and sharing as brothers of a tribe. That was our vibe, basically. Anyway, we got out of our truck after having the pakor, bathing, putting the tilak, and again, this thing, you get out of the truck and you come into the village and people just look at you. And you see you in saffron and tilak and everything. And then we sat down, and there was this lovely moment where they wanted us to sing first. So we did a little kirtan, we got it over and done with, and I wanted. Now this Nitai, who I've met earlier, you could think he was the main kirtan singer of the village, and he had trained the children, and he started to sing these kirtans, and there was the mridanga player, and everyone was around, and it was this village atmosphere, absolutely incredible. Like I keep saying, out of Gauranga Leela, and as he was singing, the children made a kind of he was singing, they kind of sang a wrong note or something, and he looked around like that, and they all went kind of like this, and he was like this, and he was very strict about it. And then he started getting absorbed, and there was this bit where he kind of looked over at us, and we looked at him, and as he went to sing, he started to sing. He got choked up with emotion. And what was wonderful about this scenario was, because when you spend time in Bengal, you see a lot of emotional, demonstrative emotionalism, and much of it is kind of theatrical. But here, this was all really, really spontaneous and natural, and he was just so full of love and the situation, and the love between us all, and he. The more he tried to control it, the more and then gradually he had to kind of break eye contact, and then he carried on, and I'll never forget that. It was a wonderful moment, really wonderful moment. And then we left that place, and then we started to go up to Rajshahi town itself, and it's quite a big town, and yeah, we were by ourselves. I remember there was just us three. We didn't take anybody from the other village, and again, it was Spot the Doty. And we just came into the town, and the first person we saw, and he was with a bicycle as well, Rasika came and spoke to him, and he actually told, we were quite close. We had to just kind of go a little bit further, turn left, and then there was this little Hindu temple there. And so we went and parked the car there, had our briefcases with these books in there, or one briefcase, and we went through this little door. I went, and there were these people sitting on in the floor. It was kind of office thing, because it was a kind of Hindu cultural thing connected with the temple. And we went in there, and of course, the first time they say you don't know who you are. And then Rasika started to speak in Bengali, and they started to told us to sit down, and then we showed them the books and what we wanted to do, and they all got kind of quite excited, and they just said, it was like, we said, we need somewhere to stay and everything, and they just said, we know exactly the person. So and he was very close by, just right, kind of a little bit round the corner from this temple. So we went out, and there was this little shop, and we went into the shop. It was a kind of very clean and neat, and as you came in, you could actually see tulsi beads hanging there, and bead bags kind of hanging on the wall. And you came in, and there was this lovely Vaishnava sitting there with little Kuntimala. He was bare-chested, little belly, sitting behind his little desk. And again, he's looking and wondering who we are. We're coming in, going like this. And they were telling us, yes, that he's one of the most prominent Vaishnavas in this town. You know, he's a great, great devotee. And we were sitting there talking, Rasika doing the talking, and he's kind of sitting there. He's very polite and everything. And then you could tell he's not really clicking who we are, what we're there for. And then Rasika gets this book out in Bengali, and on the back, it's just a picture of the Lotus building in Mayapur. And it says Sri Mayapur Dham. And he looks at it. I'll never forget this. And he starts going, looking at that, then looking at us, and looking at Mayapur, Mayapur. And he just started to shake, and he just kind of pushed everything out of the way and just did kind of went and just did dandavats on the floor in front of us. And he was this older gentleman. He's a Goswami. He's a kind of lineage of Bengali Brahmin Vaishnavas, and he's lying in front of us foreigners, and he's shaking, and even the other chaps are a bit kind of like, because this extraordinary behavior. And he starts to embrace us, and we're embracing, and he's emotional, and he's just like, you know, and he's like, yes. And I think he gets somebody, he just kind of closes the shop or gets someone to close it, and he just kind of like comes with us. I think he jumps in the van, and we just kind of all go together, and we just go around the corner, and then we come to his place, because this is where we're going to stay now. It's all just happening. And it's in the town. It's not so much out like those other places we just went were more villagey and we're kind of in the town. But there's big open area and all these pukors and ponds. And then so we came to his house that was connected to a big pukor, and we came in, and it was kind of beautiful. All these houses have these beautiful kind of courtyards, you know, either L-shaped or complete around, with verandas. And in the courtyard, there's always a tulsi. And then at one side there was a further down there was a cow shed, and then there was the pump, and it's all very small but very endearing and very clean and very beautiful. So we came to the house of Nikunjabihari Goswami, who most probably was about my age. He must be mid-60s at this time, at this period, you know, and that first, and we went into the pukor, had our bath, and then we came back, and his wife did all the cooking of the prasad, and they had in this one little room, they had their temple room, and before he was going to serve us a prasad, he wanted us to show us something, and I'd never heard this term before. He said, Bhog Darshan. Please come and Bhog Darshan. So we went into his room, and they had this beautiful altar with Gauri Nitai, a beautiful original picture, I remember, of Radha and Krishna and gopis from Jaipur. I could even tell the style. It was quite a beautiful little picture, a picture of the 6 Goswamis and a picture of his Gurudev, and it was all very neat. And then there were these black stone plates with these preparations all covered in tulsi leaves. And it's basically, he wants us to reassure us that he's a Vaishnava, and everything from his house is, he's offered it to God. Everything is prasadam, and it was just so beautiful. Everything about it was, talk about small is beautiful. You know, if I'm quite honest, this type of kind of bhakti and scenario, I find more appealing than ostentatious big temples and everything. I found everything so touching. And then we sat down to take prasadam. And of course, you see, in India, people don't just sit down with you and eat. They watch you eat, and they serve you. Not just Vaishnavas, but general, normal householders. That's very common. And there we were, sitting there, taking this. I mean, there were so many beautiful preparations and subjis and chutneys and things. And we were, and he was sitting there looking at us, and his wife was behind, and his son, and he had this fan, and he was fanning us while we were taking the prasadam, and then this thing happened where, as we were getting to near the bits of the prasadam on our plates, we could see his eyes roving, and we were just wondering, oh my goodness, what's going to happen now? I'm not really sure, because he's just like, you just never know what he's going to do, because he's so humble and devotional. And then he suddenly went to our plate, because in Vaishnava culture, it's considered quite, you hear lots of stories about devotees taking prasadam remnants from other Vaishnavas. And this is what he was doing from us. He was trying to steal the remnants from our place of food that we'd eaten, and he was trying to eat it, and that, you know, and then after that, we had to battle him off and say, no, 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 please. And he was like a little child trying to steal stuff off our plates and stuff. And then we went to, he had a jug of water at a certain place, and he was pouring it to wash our hands. And as he was pouring it, with one hand, and the water was going on here, he put his other hand underneath to get the thing to come off the fingers from eating on his hand, and then, oh my goodness, again we had to try and stop him, and it was like this. We stayed with lovely Nikunjabihari Goswami for quite a few days, and each time we had a meal, we noticed there was like more preparations than the time before, and each time there was just increased it. Oh my goodness! And well, we had, I think, 2 rooms set aside for us. We had to share a bed. It wasn't a big place, but the next morning, kind of, we went to bed quite late. He was up way before us, and he would, you would see him in the morning. He had his japa mala. He was doing his japa beads, and he had this little tulsi leaf that he'd been doing pulsa puja tied in his sika. And I can't describe how beautiful it is to see such a lovely person in the morning. You wake up and you just see this lovely Vaishnava. You just automatically think of Krishna and feel purified. You feel blessed. And then we're just getting settled, and then these kirtaniyas came, two older men, and they came into our room and they started to sing songs that some of the ones that we knew from Govinda Das and Narottam Das, and they were really, really good. We just, we were having some little snacks and things, and then they came in, and then this lovely gentleman came with his 2 daughters, Nikhil Goswami. I was trying to remember his name earlier, and I suddenly remembered him. And he when you see pictures of Jagannath Mishra or something from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that's what he looked like. He looked like he just stepped out of that. And he had these young girl daughters who were most probably 10, 11, and they were just, everything about them, the colour of their skin, the proportion of their earlobes, how fine their hair was, and the features, everything was so refined. And these young girls, one of them played the harmonium, and the other ones, they sung together, and it was just like, I literally was in heaven. This was my idea of heaven, really, and just to be, to be effortlessly absorbed in Gauranga and Chaitanya Leela, with just all you had to do was a bit like Peter Sellers, being there. You just had to be there, and all of this went on. And Nikhil Goswami really liked us and spoke quite good. Nikunjabihari hardly spoke English, and Nikhil Goswami, he immediately wanted to invite us to his house. So one day, the next day, we went to his place, and he had a house a little bit further away. He was a homeopath. I think he was the first homeopathic doctor I'd ever met, and it was very big in India, especially in Bengal. And while we were there at his house, he wanted to record me doing a kirtan and I did Tulsi Puja, and he recorded me doing Namo Namo Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namo Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eobilasi. And he, just like, I keep saying this thing, just as much as I was enthralled with their culture, they were enamored by who we were, and it was just lovely, and you were just getting spoiled rotten, and having just wonderful association with people, and just sweet discussions, and then one night we did a program in town, quite a big one. They organised it, and it was lovely. Nikunjabihari Goswami was on stage with us, and he just felt so proud. We felt so proud to have him next to us. And he wasn't an orator, a lecturer. He could hardly even play the kartals properly, but his bhakti and devotion was kind of outstanding, absolutely. Anyway, we spent a few days there, and then it was time for us to leave this place. But where we were going to was actually the village of Nikunjabihari Goswami. So we got in our vans. He came with us, or maybe, yeah, I think he came with us with our van, or yeah, pretty sure that's how he went. Or maybe they went in another vehicle, but we all arrived at this house in a village with a river quite next to it. And his daughter was very, very hospitable, and they had, a beautiful house, and it was like this. If I get boring, I just repeat the same thing happens all the time. This incredible hospitality, going to bathe in rivers, and of course, in this river though, when I went to bathe, oh my god, I was swimming across, people were screaming, and I could see coming down the thing, this thing flapping. It looked like some kind of weird stingray or some strange thing, and I just swam like anything. Lucky I could. They're not used to people swimming as fast as I could, and I got to the other side, and this thing had disappeared, gone under. And I thought, ooh, have to be a little bit careful. Can't just go in any old kind of river or something. Have to find out what's going on there first. And we did a program in their house and that night again with the slideshows and everything. And then the next morning, I didn't feel physically really, really good. I woke up with no appetite. Really, I didn't know what was going on. Never had this feeling. And they brought some, our breakfast for us. And we were only planning to have been there for the night and then go off on our journey somewhere else, because we've been there for quite a 5 days something, in the whole Rajshahi with this time at Nikunjabihari's house. And I just said, sorry, I can't. I'm not feeling well. I need to lie down. I couldn't eat the food. It was very weird for me not to have appetite. And so immediately they took me inside onto the room, and the next thing you know, I had his sister, not his daughter, his sister. Yeah, she had my head on her lap. She was rubbing my head. Somebody was massaging my right arm. So I was just lying there, and someone was fanning. And then after a while, 2 different doctors came. It was unbelievable, and everyone was just so concerned. I had no idea. I started to feel a bit better just with the amazing level of TLC. I didn't eat anything, but then it was coming to the time where it was time to leave, and I got enough kind of strength back, and I said, it's okay, I can travel, And as we were walking down to the van from the house, the car was parked a little bit away, Nikunjabihari, who was much smaller than me, and this much older, I was at this time, what was I? I was early 20s, my goodness, and he's in his 60s, this venerable Vaishnava. He's holding an umbrella over my head and holding me because I'm weak and sick. He's trying to hold me. And as we're getting nearer to the van, I can feel him starting to shake. And I'm inside, I'm thinking, oh no, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle this, really. And I'm trying to kind of go. And then we get to the car, and we're just about to kind of go and do something, and suddenly he falls down on the ground at our feet, and kind of weeping and saying, I could tell something. Ami puppy, Ami, I am a sinner. I am this lowborn. Please give me your creeper. Give me your mercy. And we had to I had to lift him up. And each one of us, and I remember Mahakratu was quite staunch kind of chap, didn't show his emotions. And I tell you what, when Nikunjabihari Goswami embraced us, my goodness, every one of us, we had tears in our eyes. It was uncontrollable. And I felt so blessed just to have met this man, this person. I mean, he was just like, yeah, humility. It was just everything that you could think of, good qualities of a Vaishnava. He had them, basically. And then we went off and we traveled, and we went to I remember we traveled. I was in the back of the van and I was not feeling very, very good. And we arrived in this village. And then you get some of these really strong village farm guys, these villages, they're incredible. Out in the middle of nowhere, down lots of bumpy roads, we got to this place. And when we got there, they actually, they told him we got one of our, chaps is ill in the back, and there's somebody just came and they just lifted me like in their arms, took me inside into this big room. I remember it was a big, big. It had high ceilings, but it had wooden beams. It was mud walls. It was very cool, and they put me on a big a bed with mosquito net around it. They just let me lie there, and it was. I think I just kind of dozed off because it had been difficult resting in the back. And then I was kind of woken up a bit later, and the sun had gone down, and there was this. We were taken to this area away from the house, and it was just one of these magical scenarios again. There was a kind of, I think there was a fire, and I just remember they were doing this arti, and they were quite tribal and far out, and they did the arti song that of Narottam Das Thakur, which is the one that we sing by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that's kind of based on that arti song, and they were singing it. And there was this one lady who was like a kind of a Vaishnavi tantric witch doctor type mixture. You see quite a lot of that in Bengal if you go into the middle areas. And she had one solid dreadlock, a bit like Mark and Penny Mark used to have his one dreadlock, but this was massive. It was like a cape. It kind of came, and she had it folded as a loop. So you can imagine it just looked really peculiar, solid mat of hair. And during the kirtan, she started to sway and things and then kind of fall on the ground. And she had her chela, who had a similar hairstyle but a little bit smaller. And she was next to her whispering and saying words in her ear. And it was all kind of quite magical. But I couldn't eat much again that night, And then we went on a little bit the next day. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't really know what was happening to me. I just thought I'd just got a little bit food poisoning or something. And we stayed at one ashram. I think went quite towards Singh, and then from Singh, then uh, um, it's amazing because during this period of traveling around, it was only over a few weeks the whole thing. But in my mind, it's like this kind of amazing epoch and experience because of all these things that happened, and also the intensity of the emotions and the visuals and the people and the context and everything. It was like being in a movie. And later, when I saw Satyajit Ray movies, Patha Panchali and everything, if you've been to Bengal, then he captures it fantastically in those movies. We came to the ashram of one Swami Nigananda, who'd passed, and it was unusual. They have a strange philosophy. They're a kind of minor sect in Bengal. They have quite a few, and then Puri, and he tried to fuse the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Shankaracharya together. Great stuff. I don't know really where he was at with his teachings, but he had very impressive pictures of him sitting with long dreadlocks, amazing, tall, impressive, with leopard skin and a big thing and a trident in his hand. And in fact, we discovered in Bangladesh there was quite a few little sub-Vaishnava sects that were, Nikunjabihari Goswami and the other Goswami I just mentioned in Rajshahi, he was actually a Dvaita Vamsa. And Nikunjabihari Goswami, he had his Goswami guru lineage. He had a guru and a guru lineage, but then when we came to this, when we went to certain places, we could see pictures of Ram Thakur and goodness gracious, I've lost the plot of him. The one with the afro haircut. I've just suddenly forgotten his name at this moment. But anyway, it will come to me. They will Jagat Bandhu. Sorry, Jagat Bandhu. He actually was the kind of guru of Premananda Bharati, who was the sadhu who came to the West just after Vivekananda. He's quite controversial. You see his pictures where he's sitting in a kind of like crossed like this, quite young with kind of afro hair. Anyway, in Bengal, many of these people, they all think that they are reincarnations of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like some other famous avatars as well, popular avatars. So we discovered that was quite big. And not only that, sometimes we found out that these Nam Yagas weren't always Hare Krishna. And some of the groups that go to these to perform these kirtans, they're paid by the people to put them up. And I didn't actually. I spoke to Vyasaki about this, and he said that he'd once gone to a place where the kirtaniers had to sing a mantra something like Guru Brahma, Guru Sham, Guru Deva, Guru Brahm, some kind of unusual mantra that they and they weren't quite happy because they didn't really know what it was all about, but they did it. So discovered that little side of Bangladesh, and that was quite interesting. Now, I actually went back to Dhaka. We all eventually went back to Dhaka because I was sick. I mean, they wanted to getting a little bit concerned, and I think maybe to stock up with more books as well. And because I was sick, they needed somebody else to join the party. And apparently, there was this other devotee that was coming at that time, Nishtula. He was a Canadian devotee and spent some time in West Bengal, and he was coming over to Bangladesh. So we went back to Dhaka. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually stop the story now because it's just turned 9 o'clock. And there's a big kind of world meditation thing going on today at 9 o'clock. And I might kind of like with David Pramal and loads of people, I might feel like I just want to connect with that, and maybe some other people who are watching might be. I'm going to continue on tomorrow. I will carry on tomorrow, and I will continue about what happens next when I get to Dhaka, basically, and the kind of like the resolution of this kind of the journey, because I learned quite a few lessons and have a kind of a surprise dip into Gaudiya Vaishnava literature by returning to Dhaka at this time. And remember, the temperature is getting higher and higher and higher and higher. And what happens is basically when I get to Dhaka, I discover I've got jaundice, a form of hepatitis, and that's not very good, and which is contagious. And I was just in the first wave of it. In fact, when I got to Dhaka, because I wasn't sure how sick I was. Vyasaki made some vegetables with this lurpak butter, and there was some watermelon, and I ate it. And that night, oh my goodness gracious, I went into most probably the worst form of illness I'd ever experienced and will ever experience, up to now at least. And it was intense. It was intense all night long, rushing to the toilet, vomiting, out this end, out that end. Oh my God. And also at that time, Ilapati had come, who's later to be called Bhakti Vikash. He was there. And I remember I was just kind of waking up all night long going to the toilet. And when I woke up in the morning, I just couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. My body was, was wrecked from it all. I think Ilapati gave me a kind of little bit of a massage just to get me going. And then I went to the doctor, and then he asked me what colour my stool was, and it was white. It just gone white. And he said, "And is your urine like Pepsi Cola?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "You got jaundice." So that's what happened, and that's what I was going through. And now I was kind of going to be almost quarantined. So that's going to be, but in all of these kind of quarantine stories, there's always a little kind of silver lining. So that's what we're going to discover. Thank you so much for joining me on this part of the story. It was a very, it affected me, just these few weeks of traveling around at this time and experiencing this pristine Gaudiya Vaishnavas and these incredible characters. I wish that everybody, whatever's going on in your life, whatever's being thrown at you, there is, I keep saying it all the time, but it is every day. I'm feeling different. I felt different yesterday, and then I woke up today in a different mood. I'm feeling differently about things, and I read some article, I hear something, I talk to a friend, and different things affect me. But generally, I'm doing fine, and I really hope that all of you are too. And if you are facing some crises, then I hope that they get resolved shortly. Lots of love, big hugs.